The mansion had been silent for 3 days. Not the good kind of silence, like when you're reading your favorite book under a blanket. No, this was the bad kind. The kind that makes your skin feel cold even when the sun is shining. The kind that wraps around your throat and squeezes. Grace pressed her dusty cloth against a grand mirror in the hallway and watched her reflection stare back at her. She had worked in this house for 2 years, cleaning every corner, washing every dish, and making sure every room sparkled like new pennies. But today, the mansion felt different. It felt wrong. 3 days ago, little Emma vanished. Emma was a millionaire's daughter, a sweet girl with curly brown hair and a laugh that sounded like tiny bells. She was only 9 years old, the same age as Grace's niece back home. Emma loved painting pictures of butterflies and always said, "Thank you," when Grace brought her warm cookies after school. Now she was gone. Detective Morris stood in the main hall with 5 other police officers. They had searched everywhere. They looked under beds, inside closets, behind curtains, and even in the garden shed where the rakes and shovels slept. They found nothing. It was like Emma had turned into smoke and floated away. "Mrs. Grace," Detective Morris said, walking toward her with tired eyes, "did you notice anything strange the day Emma disappeared?" Grace thought carefully. She remembered that morning clearly. Emma had been eating breakfast, scrambled eggs and orange juice. Her father, Mr. Thornton, sat at the other end of the long table reading his newspaper. He barely looked at his daughter. He never did. "Everything seemed normal, sir," Grace answered quietly. But that wasn't completely true. There had been something. Around lunchtime, Grace heard Emma crying upstairs. When she went to check, Mr. Thornton was standing outside Emma's bedroom door, his face red and angry. His fists were clenched tight, like he was holding invisible rocks. "She's being punished." He had snapped at Grace. "Go back to your work." Grace had obeyed. She always obeyed. That's what maids were supposed to do. Stay quiet, work hard, and never ask questions. But now Emma was missing, and that memory burned in Grace's mind like a hot coal. "Thank you, Mrs. Grace," Detective Morris sighed. "If you remember anything else, please tell us immediately." Grace nodded and watched the detective walk away. His shoulders drooped like he was carrying a heavy backpack full of stones. The other officers began leaving one by one. Soon, the mansion was quiet again. Mr. Thornton stood by the giant window in his study, staring out at his perfect garden with its roses and fountains. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just stood there, still as a statue. Grace didn't trust him. Maybe that was a terrible thing to think about her boss, the man who paid her salary and gave her a place to work. But Grace had seen things. She had seen how he looked at Emma sometimes, like she was a broken toy he wanted to throw away. She had heard him yell at the little girl for spilling juice or laughing too loud. "Money doesn't make you kind," Grace's grandmother used to say. "A rich heart is better than a rich wallet." Mr. Thornton had the wallet, but his heart? Grace wasn't so sure. That night, after all the police had gone and Mr. Thornton had locked himself in his study with his whiskey bottle, Grace walked through the mansion alone. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors. The moonlight came through the tall windows and made strange shadows on the walls. She stopped outside Emma's bedroom. The door was closed, but Grace could still remember what the room looked like. Pink curtains, stuffed animals on the bed, drawings of butterflies taped to the walls. Everything a little girl should love. Grace put her hand on the doorknob. Her heart thumped hard in her chest. Should I go inside? She wondered. What if I find something the police missed? She twisted the knob and pushed. The room was dark except for a small nightlight shaped like a star. Emma's bed was made perfectly, too perfectly. No little girl made her bed that neat. Someone else had done it. Grace walked slowly around the room. She checked under the bed. Nothing. She looked inside the closet. Just dresses and shoes. She felt along the walls, pressing her palms against the flowery wallpaper. Then she heard it. Top, top, top. Grace froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The sound came from behind her, from the wall near Emma's bookshelf. Top, top, top. It was soft, like someone knocking with one finger. Grace turned around slowly, her eyes wide. She pressed her ear against the wall and listened. Silence. Then, top, top, top. Someone was behind that wall. Someone was trying to get out. Grace's hands shook as she ran her fingers along the wallpaper, searching for something. Anything. That felt different. And then she found it. A tiny crack, barely visible, running straight up and down like a secret line drawn by a ghost. Her heart hammered. So loud, she thought it might wake up the whole house. Could it be? She thought. Could Emma be alive? Could she be here? But if Emma was behind this wall, why hadn't she screamed for help? Why hadn't she made noise when the police were searching? Unless someone had told her not to. Unless someone had scared her so badly that she was too afraid to make a sound. Grace's stomach twisted. She thought of Mr. Thornton's angry face, his clenched fists, his cold eyes. She thought of how he had said, "She's being punished." What kind of punishment traps a little girl behind a wall? Grace knew she had to be careful. If she was right, and Emma really was hidden somewhere in this house, then someone had put her there on purpose. Someone dangerous. Someone who wouldn't want Grace finding out the truth. But Grace also knew something else, something her grandmother had taught her long ago. When you see someone hurting, you don't look away. You help, even if it's scary, even if it's hard. Grace took a deep breath and made her decision. She was going to find Emma. No matter what. Grace didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small room on the first floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to the mansion breathe. Every creak of wood, every whisper whined through the windows made her jump. She kept thinking about that sound, tap, 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 and wondering if she had imagined it. But she knew she hadn't. When the clock struck 5 in the morning, Grace gave up trying to rest. She got dressed in her gray uniform and white apron, tied her hair back with ribbon, and tiptoed upstairs. The sun hadn't risen yet. The whole house was still wrapped in darkness. Mr. Thornton's bedroom door was closed. Good. He was still asleep. Grace crept down the hallway toward Emma's room. Her hands were sweating. Her heart felt like a drum beating inside her chest. What if I'm wrong? She thought. What if there's nothing there? But then another voice in her head whispered, what if you're right? What if Emma needs you? That voice was louder. Grace slipped inside Emma's bedroom and closed the door softly behind her. The star-shaped nightlight still glowed in the corner. She moved quickly to the wall where she had heard the tapping, the one near the bookshelf filled with fairy tale books and stories about brave princesses. She pressed her ear against the wallpaper again and waited. Nothing. Grace's shoulders sagged. Maybe she really had imagined it. Maybe the stress and worry had made her hear things that weren't. Top, top, top. Grace gasped. There it was again, soft and careful, like someone was afraid to make too much noise. Emma? Grace whispered against the wall. Emma, is that you? The tapping stopped. Grace's throat felt tight. She pressed her palm flat against the wallpaper and spoke a little louder. Emma, honey, if you can hear me. Tap one more time. Silence stretched like a rubber band pulled too far. Then tap, one single knock. Tears filled Grace's eyes. Emma was alive. She was right here, trapped behind this wall, and Grace was going to get her out. Grace's fingers moved along the crack she had found the night before. She pushed against it, pulled at it, tried to find where it opened. The wallpaper was thick and smooth, hiding the secret underneath. Then she remembered something. Mr. Thornton's mansion was very old, over 100 years. Old houses sometimes had hidden rooms, secret passages, and doors that looked like walls. Grace had read about them in mystery books. She stepped back and studied the bookshelf. It was tall and made of dark wood, filled with colorful books. Grace grabbed the edge and pulled. It didn't move. She pulled harder, using all her strength. The bookshelf groaned and scraped against the floor, and then it swung outward like a door. Behind it was a small wooden door, painted the same color as the wall. It had a silver lock on it, old and rusty. Grace's hands shook as she tried the handle. Locked. Emma, she called softly through the door. Sweetheart, I'm going to get you out. I promise. A tiny voice answered from the other side. Weak. Scared. Grace. Yes, baby, it's me. Please, please don't tell him. Those words pierced Grace's heart like sharp needles. Him. Emma meant her father. Mr. Thornton had done this. He had locked his own daughter behind a wall. Grace wanted to scream. She wanted to run downstairs and call the police right now. But she couldn't, not yet. If Mr. Thornton woke up and found out what she was doing, he might hurt Emma. Or worse. I won't tell him, Grace promised. But I need to find the key. Can you wait just a little longer? I am scared. Emma whimpered. I know, honey. I know you are. But you're so brave. Just hold on. Grace closed the bookshelf carefully and hurried out of the room. She needed to find that key. But where would Mr. Thornton hide it? She thought about all the places in the mansion. His study, his bedroom, the library. Then she remembered. Mr. Thornton had a safe in his office. A big black box with a combination lock. That's where he kept important papers, money, and keys. Grace's stomach twisted. The safe was in his study, right next to his bedroom. If he caught her sneaking around in there, she'd be in terrible danger. But Emma was depending on her. Grace walked down the hallway, her feet silent as a cat's. She reached the study door and turned the handle slowly. It opened with a soft click. The room smelled like old books and cigar smoke. Mr. Thornton's desk sat in the middle, covered with papers and pens. Behind it stood the safe, tall, black, and Loctite. Grace didn't know the combination. She stared at the safe, feeling hopeless. Then she noticed something. On Mr. Thornton's desk, hidden under a stack of papers, was a small leather notebook. Grace picked it up and flipped through the pages. It was filled with numbers, dates, and notes written in Mr. Thornton's messy handwriting. On the last page, she saw it. Safe combination, August 14th, 29. Grace's hands trembled as she knelt in front of the safe and spun the dial. 8/14/29. Click. The safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of money, important documents, and a small wooden box. Grace opened the box and found 3 keys. One was big and brass. One was tiny and silver. One was medium-sized and rusty. The rusty one. That had to be it. Grace grabbed the key and closed the safe. She was just about to leave when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. A man's footsteps. Mr. Thornton was awake. Grace's blood turned to ice. She looked around frantically. There was nowhere to hide, no closet, no curtain, nothing. If he came into the study and found her there, he would know. He would know she had opened his safe. He would know she had found his secret. The footsteps got closer. Grace did the only thing she could think of. She dropped to the floor and crawled under the desk, pressing herself into the small space between the wooden legs. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. The study door opened. Mr. Thornton walked in, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor. Grace held her breath and squeezed her eyes shut. Please don't look down. Please don't look down. Mr. Thornton walked to the window and stood there, silent. Grace could see his shoes just inches from her face. One move, one sound, and he would discover her. After what felt like forever, Mr. Thornton sighed and walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. Grace waited until his footsteps faded completely. Then she crawled out from under the desk, gasping for air. Her whole body shook like a leaf in the wind. But she had the key. Grace rushed back to Emma's room. She pushed the bookshelf aside, unlocked the rusty door, and pulled it open. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, dark and dusty. And sitting in the corner, dirty and thin, with tears running down her face, was Emma. Grace. Emma threw her arms around Grace's neck and sobbed. Grace held the little girl tight, tears streaming down her own cheeks. "You're safe now, baby. You're safe." Emma pulled back and looked at Grace with terrified eyes. "He locked me in here because I broke his favorite cup. He said I was bad. He said I deserved to be punished." Grace's heart shattered into a million pieces. "You're not bad, Emma. You're perfect. And what he did was wrong. So wrong. If he finds out you helped me." Emma whispered, her voice shaking. Grace took Emma's small hands in hers. "Listen to me. We're going to leave this house tonight. Both of us. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, somewhere he can never hurt you again." "But how?" Emma asked. "He watches everything. The butler, Mr. James, tells him everything." Grace had almost forgotten about Mr. James. He was Mr. Thornton's butler, a tall, cold man with gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. He had worked for Mr. Thornton for 20 years and was loyal as a guard dog. "We'll be careful," Grace promised. "Tonight, when it's dark, we'll sneak out through the garden. I have a friend, Henry the gardener. He'll help us." Emma nodded slowly, hope flickering in her eyes like a tiny candle flame. Grace helped Emma out of the crawl space and gave her water and crackers from her apron pocket. The little girl ate like she hadn't had food in days, because she probably hadn't. As Emma drank, Grace's mind raced with plans. They had to wait until nightfall. They had to pack only what they could carry. They had to avoid Mr. James, avoid Mr. Thornton, and avoid every creaky floorboard in this massive house. It would be dangerous. It would be terrifying. But Grace had made a promise, and she never broke her promises. "Rest now," Grace told Emma, tucking her into the small crawl space with a blanket. "I'll come back for you when it's time." And Emma, "Yes, you are the bravest girl I've ever met." Emma smiled, a small, fragile smile, and closed her eyes. Grace locked the door again, pushed the bookshelf back into place, and left the room. Her mind was set. Her heart was strong. Tonight, they would escape. Tonight, everything would change. The day crawled by like a snail crossing a road. Grace cleaned the mansion like she always did, dusting furniture, washing dishes, sweeping floors. But her mind was far away, planning every detail of their escape. Every time she passed Mr. Thornton in the hallway, her heart jumped into her throat. Every time Mr. James looked at her with those cold gray eyes, she wondered if he knew, but she kept her face calm. She kept her hands steady. She was an actress playing a role of normal maid, while inside, her thoughts spun like a tornado. At lunch, Grace found a moment to slip outside to the garden. Henry, the gardener, was trimming the rose bushes. He was an old man with kind eyes and hands covered in dirt, the kind of person who loved flowers more than people. "Henry," Grace whispered, glancing back at the mansion windows, "I need your help. Tonight." Henry looked up concerned. "What's wrong, Grace?" Grace told him everything about Emma, the hidden room, Mr. Thornton's cruelty, and their plan to escape. As she spoke, Henry's face grew darker and darker, like storm clouds gathering. "That poor child," he muttered, shaking his head. "I always knew something was wrong in this house. Too much money, not enough love. Will you help us?" Grace asked, her voice pleading. Henry didn't hesitate. "I'll have my truck ready at the back gate at midnight. And Grace, I'm calling the police the moment you're safe." Relief flooded through Grace like warm sunshine. "Thank you, Henry. Thank you so much." As evening fell, Grace prepared. She packed a small bag with clothes, food, and Emma's favorite stuffed rabbit. She watched the clock tick slowly toward midnight. Each minute felt like an hour. At 11:30, Grace crept upstairs to Emma's room. The mansion was dark and quiet. Mr. Thornton had gone to bed an hour ago. Mr. James was in his quarters on the other side of the house. It was time. Grace pushed the bookshelf aside and unlocked the hidden door. Emma was awake, waiting, her eyes wide in the darkness. "Ready?" Grace whispered. Emma nodded and took Grace's hand. Her small fingers felt cold and fragile, like bird bones. They moved through the mansion like ghosts, down the hallway, past the portraits of Mr. Thornton's ancestors who seemed to watch them with judging eyes, down the grand staircase where each step creaked softly. Grace's breath came in short gasps. Almost there. Almost there. They reached the back door that led to the garden. Grace's hand touched the doorknob, and then lights blazed on. Grace spun around, her heart stopping. Mr. Thornton stood at the bottom of the stairs in his silk robe, his face twisted with rage. Beside him was Mr. James, holding a phone. "Going somewhere, Grace?" Mr. Thornton's voice was soft, but it sliced through the air like a knife. Emma whimpered and hid behind Grace's dress. Grace stepped in front of the little girl, shielding her with her body. Her legs shook, but she lifted her chin high. "I'm taking Emma away from you. You locked your own daughter behind a wall. You starved her. You hurt her. What kind of monster does that? Mr. Thornton's face turned red. She needed to learn discipline. She's my daughter, and I'll raise her how I see fit. No, Grace said firmly. Her voice didn't shake anymore. No child deserves to be treated like that. Not ever. Mr. Thornton took a step forward. You're just a maid. You're nobody. Give me my daughter, or I'll make sure you never work again. I'll make sure you go to jail for kidnapping. Grace's mind raced. She couldn't fight Mr. Thornton. She couldn't run. He was blocking the only exit, but she could do one thing. She could protect Emma until help arrived. Henry called the police. Grace lied, hoping it sounded convincing. They're already on their way. Mr. Thornton's eyes flickered with doubt. You're bluffing. Am I? Grace challenged. For a long moment, nobody moved. The mansion held its breath. And then, sirens. Faint at first, then louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Mr. Thornton's face went pale. What have you done? The front door burst open, and police officers rushed in, the same Detective Morris from before, along with 4 other officers. That's him. Henry's voice called from behind the officers. The old gardener stepped forward, his face angry and determined. That's the man who hurt the child. Detective Morris looked at Mr. Thornton, then at Grace holding Emma, then back at Mr. Thornton. Mr. Thornton, we receive a call that your daughter was found alive. Is this true? Mr. Thornton opened his mouth, but no words came out. Emma stepped out from behind Grace. Her voice was small but clear. He locked me in the wall. For 3 days. Because I broke his cup. The detective's face hardened like stone. Mr. Thornton, you're under arrest for child abuse and false reporting. He nodded to the other officers, who moved forward with handcuffs. Mr. Thornton shouted and struggled, but it was no use. Within minutes, he was being led out of the mansion in handcuffs, still yelling about his rights and his lawyers. Mr. James just stood there, his cold face finally showing emotion. Shame. Detective Morris knelt down in front of Emma. You're safe now, sweetheart. He can't hurt you anymore. Emma looked up at Grace with tears in her eyes. What happens to me now? Grace knelt beside her and held her tight. I don't know yet, baby, but I promise I'll stay with you. I won't leave you alone. Detective Morris smiled gently. We'll sort everything out. But Grace, what you did tonight, you saved this child's life. You're a hero. Grace didn't feel like a hero. She just felt tired and grateful and relieved. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Mr. Thornton was sent to jail. The judge said he would stay there for a very long time. The mansion was sold, and all the money went into a special account for Emma's future. Grace talked to social workers, lawyers, and judges. She told them she wanted to take care of Emma, to give her a real home, a safe home, a loving home. And after lots of paperwork and questions and meetings, they said yes. Grace found a small cottage at the edge of town. It had a blue door, a tiny garden, and windows that let in lots of sunshine. It wasn't fancy. It didn't have marble floors or crystal chandeliers. But it was warm. It was safe. It was home. Emma learned to smile again. She learned to laugh without being afraid. She painted pictures of butterflies and stuck them on the refrigerator. She went to a new school where teachers were kind and friends were plenty. At night, Grace would tuck Emma into bed and read her stories about brave princesses who saved themselves. Grace, Emma asked one evening, holding her stuffed rabbit close. Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you found me. Grace's eyes filled with tears, the good kind this time. I'm glad to, baby. I'm so glad to. They planted roses in their little garden. Pink ones, like the ones that used to grow at the mansion. But these roses were different. These roses grew in soil fed by love, not fear. Years passed. Emma grew into a strong, kind young woman. She became a social worker, helping other children who were scared and alone. She told them her story, how a brave maid had risked everything to save her, how courage doesn't always come from rich people or powerful people. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who choose to do what's right, even when it's hard. The old mansion still stood on the hill, but nobody lived there anymore. People in town called it the Mansion of Shadows, and children made up spooky stories about it. But Grace and Emma knew the truth. It wasn't a place of ghosts. It was a place where darkness had tried to win, but light had fought back. It was a place where a little girl was trapped, but love had set her free. Sometimes Grace and Emma would drive past the mansion on their way to the market. Emma would look up at the tall windows and say, "I'm not scared of it anymore." And Grace would smile and reply, "That's because you're braver than you know." The world kept spinning. People kept chasing money and power and big, fancy things. But Grace taught Emma something more important. The greatest treasures aren't things you can buy. They're the people you love, the kindness you share, and the courage you show when someone needs help. Grace never became famous. Her name was never in newspapers or history books. But in Emma's heart, Grace was the most important person who ever lived. On quiet evenings, when the sun painted the sky orange and pink, Grace and Emma would sit in their garden with cups of tea. They would watch the roses bloom and feel the soft breeze on their faces. "Do you think people will remember our story?" Emma once asked. Grace thought for a moment, then smiled. "Maybe not, but that's okay. We don't need fame or glory. We just need each other." Emma nodded and rested her head on Grace's shoulder. "That's enough for me." And it was because in the end, love was stronger than cruelty. Hope was stronger than fear. And one woman's courage had broken a cycle of pain, proving that even in the darkest mansion, even behind the thickest walls, light can always find a way in. The ribbon Emma once wore in her hair now hung on a nail in their cottage, a reminder of who she used to be and who she had become. The hidden crawl space in the old mansion was sealed forever, and the candle Grace had once lit in that dark space became a symbol. Even the smallest flame can chase away the biggest shadows. Their story became a whisper in the wind, a lesson in the leaves, a truth that couldn't be silenced. Humanity is the greatest inheritance of all. Grace's spirit, her apron-first bravery, her gentle resolve, her unwavering mercy, lived on in every life she touched. The cycle of fear was broken, and the light endured. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of courage, hope, and the power of doing what's right. Your support helps us bring more stories like Emma and Grace's to life. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change someone's day, or even their life. Thank you for reading, and remember, you have the power to be someone's hero too.